For one half of basketball, Wednesday, the San Antonio Spurs looked like they were going to put an end to their losing streak, which was at 8 games going into Wednesday's game. But the second half came and the Spurs struggled, and OKC made a 20-point comeback and ended up winning this game. And so the Spurs' losing streak is extended tonight. How's it going, everyone? This is Paul Garcia, Project Spurs. Let's jump into a quick recap of this game and what happened for the San Antonio Spurs on Wednesday. So before tip-off, multiple key players for both teams were out in this game. So for the Spurs, they were missing two starters in Jakob Poeltl and Jeremy Sohan, two players in the front court, and then also Josh Richardson bench. So those are the three players, key players that were out for San Antonio. And then for OKC, their best player out on the court, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, was also out due to injury. So that was before the game, kind of the scenario for both teams going into this one. Now let's go through a quick recap of what happened. And, this graph here kind of shows what's going on here, or this graph chart. Shows what happened here. So as you can see, they're very close first quarter. The Spurs are up by 2 midway through the first quarter. Then by the end of the first quarter, they're up by 3. I did note that early on the San Antonio was able to do what they wanted offensively. They were getting good quality shots against the Thunder defense. In the second quarters, where San Antonio really took control, midway through the second quarter, they end up going up by as many as 20 points, and they're up by 12 midway. Actually, they end up going up by 12 points, should I say, and they're up by 12 midway through the second quarter. I did want to note that the Spurs' defense was very aggressive and active there in that second quarter from what I saw. And then by halftime, the Spurs were up by 17, and they did actually build their lead up to 20 at that point. And they had just had a remarkable first half shooting the ball and scoring. I mean, they scored 42 points in the second quarter, 35 in the first quarter, and so they end up with the halftime scoring 77 points against this Thunder team at halftime. So you would think they were really rolling. This is going to be finally their game where they end the losing streak. And no, the second quarter comes, as you can see there. So what happens now in the second quarter? The second half comes. So in the second half, the Spurs really struggle. They're up by 12 midway through the third quarter. So the Thunder are slowly starting to break down that San Antonio lead. They get it down to 8 points within those first 6 minutes of the third quarter. Then by the time the third quarter ends, the Spurs are only leading by 8 points. So OKC has it down to an 8-point game. In the fourth quarter is when OKC really makes the charge and takes over the lead. So midway through the fourth quarter, you could just see the Thunder slowly clawing at the Spurs' lead. It's down to 5, the Spurs' lead. Then it's down to 3. It's tied. And then all of a sudden, midway through the third, there are the Spurs now down by 5. Both teams do get it to crunch time, and they both struggle. You kind of expect that they both had losing records in crunch time, but OKC ends up ending up making the most significant plays there, especially with that rookie Jalen Williams has a really good scoring play there in the closing minutes for OKC, and so the Thunder end up winning this game at the free throw line late in the game by 8 points. So again, the Spurs' losing streak is extended to 9 with this loss to the Thunder. And I just want to talk about how it was just a complete opposite of their first half scoring, the Spurs, compared to the second half. Like I said, they go into halftime, they've already scored 77 points just in one half. And then look at this. In the second half, they scored just 34 as a team. Both the third and fourth quarter, they're held below 20 points. And just look at the shooting numbers for multiple players. Keldon, 1 of 14. Bates-Diop, 2 of 7. You see Trey Jones, 2 of 10. And so, yeah, it was just a really struggling second half for the team. They shoot just 2 of 19 as a ball club from the 3-point line, 4 of 8 from the free throw line, and then also even though they had a low turnover night, 7 of their turnovers did come there in the second half, and of course the Thunder made them pay for that with 14 points off turnovers. So again, that second half was just really brutal shooting the ball for San Antonio, which is why OKC was able to make that comeback. And if you look at the Thunder's numbers here, they shoot 56% from the floor in the second half. They don't shoot that much better from 3, but they are getting to the free throw line, and then also they took care of the ball as well there in the second half. So overall, we want to look at your leading scorers. Devin Vassell was leading scorer for the Spurs with 25 points, especially from the 3-point line. He had 9 points, and then also his free throws, he was getting there more than usual with 8 points. Keldon Johnson ends up with 19 points, but like we mentioned there in the shooting numbers, he actually took more shots just to get to those 19 points. I think he took 22 shots for the game. So Keldon had a tough night shooting the ball, even though he did score 19 points. Trey Jones ends up with 15 points, 12 of his points coming in the paint. And Romeo Langford had a pretty good game here for San Antonio off the bench. 14 points, really active on the boards with 8 points there in the paint. And then also Bates-Diop with 11 points. For OKC, like I mentioned, rookie Jalen Williams was really impressive with 27 points, 18 points in the paint attacking the Spurs' defense. Lou Dort with 23 points, both scoring inside and outside for OKC. Trey Mann really kind of turned that game for the Thunder in the second half. He came off the bench and was just really impactful in his minutes for OKC, and so he really helped. The crowd really got into it behind his kind of shooting, where he takes those really long threes against you as a ball club. And then Josh Giddey, of course, running the point for OKC with 14 points, and then rookie Ousmane Dieng with 10 points off the bench for OKC. Now, as far as like who won where areas, the Spurs barely won the 3-point line by 3 points, and then they barely won the free throw line by 5 points. But look at this big advantage for OKC. They ended up winning the paint by 16 points, and we'll get into the shot selection in this next area. All right, so we look at the shot selection for both teams. Like you see here, like the Thunder, they made it a priority to make sure they're just they're attacking the Spurs' defense inside, and look what they did. I mean, 63% of their shots came from within the paint, and they shot a pretty good number there. 59% of their attempts went in. And then as we look for the Spurs' shot selection, they had a good night making their shots to the paint, but half their shots came from the paint. But then again, that 3-point shooting really hurt them in the second half, where just overall for the game they end up shooting 27%. From the 3-point line, and that's kind of been a struggle for this team, which is one area where they've really been struggling as they've been part of this 9-game losing streak. A lot of times you look at the stat sheet, and the 3-point ball is just not going in for San Antonio anymore at an efficient rate like it was early on of the season. And then those are the Thunder. One thing you want to note too is the points off turnovers, where the Thunder outscored the Spurs 20-8. All right, so 22 games now in the season. Let's see how this game compared on offense for the Spurs compared to some of their other games. So what were some of the good things we saw in this game for the Spurs? 59% accuracy in the paint. Again, that was a good number for them. 19 made free throws. They made more than their usual. And then 11 turnovers. So again, the turnovers, they kept them down compared to their usual numbers, but it was that second half when they ended up with 7 of those turnovers in the second half. The not so good numbers for the Spurs, a 20-point lead is no longer safe for this team. So again, they don't have many games when they lead by 20. It was just their 4th game tonight, but they are now 3-1 when they do lead by 20. So again, when they go by 20 points, that's still an area to be cautious with when you're watching the San Antonio team. Again, low number of made threes for this team, just 30 points from the 3-point line. They shot, like I mentioned earlier, 2 of 19 in the second half shooting. Overall, 27% accuracy from 3 is not a good number. They had some difficulty there. And then they weren't able to get out in transition with just 11 fast break points on offense for San Antonio. Defense, this ended up being a better night for San Antonio, which is on the defensive end. You see more highlights here, or at least more positives. So one good thing for them is that they finally stopped, is they didn't fall behind by 10. The biggest lead for the Thunder was that final score of 8 points. So again, the Spurs usually fall behind by 10 pretty early, and they actually average, falling behind by about 18 points a game. So that was a good thing. They kept it pretty close, even though they had the lead in the beginning. OKC only made 27 points on the 3-point line, so that's a low number for an opponent for the Spurs. The Thunder shot just 33% accuracy from the 3-point line, so that's also a low number. The Thunder's 59% accuracy in the paint was also a good number for the Spurs' defense. And then the Thunder just made 14 made free throws and only 8 fast break points. So better transition defense from the Spurs. The not so good numbers for San Antonio's defense. OKC, like I mentioned, did score 70 points in the paint. The Spurs had just 5 steals, and the Thunder only turned the ball over 12 times. On the few chances that the Thunder did turn the ball over, the Spurs really didn't make them pay. They scored just 8 points off those 12 turnovers, which is 0.67 points per OKC turnover. And then the team, they only had 2 blocks, and then OKC had 15 offensive rebounds. So those were some of the negatives on defense. All right, so 22 games in now. Where are the Spurs? They are now 6-16 overall, 14th out west. Just the Rockets have a worse record than them out west, and they have the 4th worst record in the NBA. So again, if you're looking to the lottery, they're almost right there. Again, all you got to do is be one of those teams with one of the worst 3 records, and you have a chance of getting a 14% chance at the number 1 pick with the lottery odds. The Spurs are also 3-8 road now, matching their home record, which is also 3-8. They're 2-14 against the West, 2-6 in crunch time when the game gets close, and then they are on a 9-game losing streak, which of course is the longest losing streak currently in the NBA amongst all the teams playing games. And so next, I don't know if the Spurs will be able to beat to break their losing streak this coming weekend. This is probably their best chance on Wednesday against the Thunder, unless they play really well, or maybe like one of these 2 teams sit some players like the Milwaukee Bucks did. So on Friday they host the Pelicans, so they're back in San Antonio, and the Pelicans are 13-8 as of Wednesday evening, and have the 3rd best record out west. And then on Sunday, they get the best team out west. That's the Phoenix Suns, who are 14-6. So again, the schedule doesn't get any easier for the Spurs. We'll see. Are they able to break that losing streak this weekend? If not, it may have to wait until sometime next week. So for Project Spurs, I am Paul Garcia.